Peace, family. It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to Night School. Every night here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, we hold Night School. And every night, we have a deep conversation about the biggest issues, the most controversial topics, the most intense debates going on in the world today. And tonight is absolutely no difference. Y'all will notice I'm not in the studio tonight. That's because I've been on the road ripping and running. But even when I'm on the road and don't make it to the studio, I still make sure that I'm here with y'all having the conversations and making sure that we address all the issues that are going on in the world today. And so I want to just get started with that because we got a lot of ground to cover. Today has been wild. And of course, I feel like no matter what's going on in the world, we got to talk about Donald Trump because y'all president, Donald J. Trump, is once again in the news. And you know that face right there too, because Donald Trump is mentioned multiple times in the new documents surrounding the 2006 prosecution of pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. That's right. Y'all know that name. You've been hearing it for years now. A Florida judge released nearly 200 pages of graphic transcripts that really just unpack a whole bunch of messiness that the world really needs to understand. In 2008, Epstein cut a deal with then state prosecutor Alexander Acosta. And if you know that name, Alexander Acosta, there's a reason why you know that name, because Alexander Acosta, who was then a state prosecutor, became Donald Trump's labor secretary. That's why the name sounds familiar. And after ordering a release of the files, the judge referred to Epstein without a drop of hyperbole. I mean, he's not exaggerating even a little bit. He says Epstein is the, quote, most infamous pedophile in American history. The judge added that the details in the record will be outrageous to, quote, decent people. And all of the conduct at issue is sexually deviant, disgusting, and criminal. Now, in 2019, Donald Trump had to respond to criticism about how Acosta dealt with this case. And Trump had an opportunity to stand up and say that was wrong. I disagree. Even if you named him labor secretary, you could say, you know what? He had a blemish on his record. He made a mistake. He handled the Epstein thing wrong. But of course, Donald Trump would never do that. Instead, Donald Trump defended Acosta's handling of the deal. In this deal, Epstein avoided charges of rape and he avoided charges of sex trafficking. Now, this is important because this isn't just a boss who's defending his workers. Donald Trump, who, by the way, was named in an earlier batch of Epstein documents, was once friends with the world's most infamous pedophile. They partied together at Mar-a-Lago, and they even had dinner together at Epstein's Manhattan mansion. I mean, this is not a casual acquaintance. You see them here. Look at these images, hanging, posing, looking for women together. We got video of them whispering, "Oh, she's hot." There's no shortage of evidence that these two were very close friends. Trump has been, of course, embroiled in his own sexual scandals. Trump has been accused of sexually assaulting more than a dozen women, and he was found guilty of rape by a New York judge. The victim was E. Jean Carroll. Now, in 2016, an anonymous woman came forward claiming that Donald Trump raped her when she was just 13 years old. There is a deposition available. Now, this deposition is gruesome. It's really, really graphic. The woman eventually dropped the lawsuit, and the reason she dropped the lawsuit, we seem to believe, it is because, according to her, she received death threats and she feared for her life. Now, we don't know if what the source of those threats were. I'm not saying Donald Trump threatened her, but the accusations were there, the threats were there, the fear was there, and that's noteworthy. But also noteworthy is the fact that Donald Trump has never been charged with any misconduct related to Jeffrey Epstein. It's important to note that. But still, I want you to take a listen to something that Donald Trump said last month. He was on Fox News, which in general is a home game. And on Fox News, y'all's president, he was asked whether or not he should declassify, what his thoughts were on declassifying the Epstein documents. And here is what he said specifically about declassifying the Epstein files.
Declassify, you can answer yes or no to these.
Yeah.
Would you declassify the 9/11 files?
Yeah.
Would you declassify JFK files?
Yeah.
Would
I
you,
did. I did a lot of it.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah. Yeah, I would.
All right.
I guess I would. I think that less so because, you don't know it. You don't want to affect people's lives if it's phony stuff in there because there's a lot of phony stuff with that whole world. But I think I would, or at least
Do you think that would restore trust? Help restore trust?
Yeah, I don't know about Epstein so much as I do the others. Certainly about the way he died. It would be interesting to find out what happened there because that was a weird situation. And
wow. This is so interesting. Now, Fox News later did something interesting because, again, I told you Fox News is a home game. For Donald Trump, that's ground zero. At least it was for a very long time. It still is in many ways. Fox News later on edited out Donald Trump saying that he might keep the Epstein files sealed. They just had him going, yeah. But later on, Donald Trump, even in that interview, expressed some ambivalence. Well, there's some weird stuff. There's some stuff that's not true. Even though this is the most infamous pedophile in American history, he doesn't want the info leaked. Is it a coincidence that it's his homie? Is it a coincidence that the Secretary of Labor was once a state prosecutor that cut Epstein a sweet deal? Look, I'm not casting any allegations against Donald Trump around this. Donald Trump has enough stuff proven about himself that we don't have to guess. We don't need innuendo. We don't need to cast any aspersions. We can just look at Donald Trump's demonstrated record. We can look at what he said on the record. We can look at what he said in transcripts. We can look at what he said in depositions. We can look at what people have testified to. We can look at concrete evidence. We don't need a whole lot to go after Donald Trump. But it is interesting that Donald Trump is not implicated in the Epstein stuff, but he's damn sure connected to it. And he seems very uncomfortable declassifying those files. Why? Is it because he's implicated? Is it because his friends are? Is it because he has some connection to Epstein where he's committed to protecting him, even though Trump isn't directly responsible? All of those things are possible. And the problem is Donald Trump has given us no reason to believe that he is not complicit. He's given us no reason to believe that he's trustworthy. He's given us no reason to believe that he deserves the benefit of any doubt. And so based on that alone, we can't ride with Donald Trump on this issue. We have to ask questions, and a question that should be asked to Republican voters and you Democrats out there who are thinking about voting for Trump, or you independent-minded people who think that you're somehow smarter than everybody else and just by being contrarian and choosing Trump, or you Negroes out there, especially brothers who are voting Trump because somehow you think that the white man's ice is colder and his water is wetter. For all y'all out there that are somehow so outraged by Joe Biden being old, and Joe Biden is old, and so incapable of voting for Joe Biden because he doesn't have the mental status and the mental capacity to run to run the country. And again, I agree that Joe Biden should step aside. This ain't about Joe Biden. No, I'm just saying, if you're that outraged about Biden, as you should be, then maybe you should be outraged that this president, former president who's running for president again, Donald Trump, has credible sexual assault allegations against him, has been convicted of numerous acts of illegality, has committed numerous acts of harm, and is now so tied up in this Epstein mess that he doesn't even want to declassify the documents. And again, I'm not saying he committed a crime with Epstein. Y'all not gonna sue me. What I am saying is he seems really uncomfortable, and this 1 degree of separation from Trump and a whole lot of Epstein nastiness. And that's something we should think about. So if you are a Trump supporter, is this the bridge that's too far for you? What would Donald Trump have to do to actually lose your vote? What would have to happen? Like literally, I mean, and I mean this, like what would have to happen? Who would have to come forward? What allegations would have to be made? What would Donald Trump have to obstruct? What kind of justice would he have to obstruct for you to finally say Donald Trump is a terrible human being who should never be running anything? That's all I'm saying. It's something that y'all should at least be asking yourselves. You know who else? We got to move on. You know who else should be asking questions? J.D. Vance. Do y'all know J.D. Vance? Y'all should know J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is a Republican senator out of Ohio. Now, some of y'all obviously don't rock with J.D. Vance for that very reason, which I understand. But J.D. Vance is more than just a Republican senator out of Ohio. He's also the author of a phenomenal book called Hillbilly Elegy, which y'all should read. If you haven't read that book, go read it, I promise you. But before he was writing Hillbilly Elegy, and before he was a senator at Ohio, and before he was Donald Trump's potential running mate, J.D. Vance was on MSNBC. That's why you see that MSNBC symbol at the bottom of the screen. This is a still shot of a moment where J.D. Vance appeared on a Hardball with Chris Matthews. And when J.D. Vance shows up to Hardball with Chris Matthews, he gets asked a very interesting question, and a provocative question. And the question that he was asked was about Donald Trump. And specifically, he was asked about Donald Trump and an accusation of sexual assault. Right? Now, here's the thing. J.D. Vance, before he was a Republican darling, J.D. Vance, before he was a leading candidate to be vice president of the United States on Donald Trump's ticket, if they win, he was somebody who called Donald Trump an idiot. He's somebody who compared Donald Trump to Adolf Hitler. And now we have found evidence that Donald Trump also is not believed by J.D. Vance on the issue of sexual assault allegations, specifically around a woman named Jessica Leeds. Jessica Leeds, if you don't know, claimed that Donald Trump groped her. She came forward along with other women in Mediaite. By the way, go to Mediaite.com and check out the story. They have a great story on this. It gives you all the background. But Leeds came forward with other women who said, "Look, Trump assaulted us." She testified in the E. Jean Carroll civil trial, which again, Trump was found liable for sexual assault by a preponderance of the evidence. But a lot of people dismissed her. Trump dismissed her. There are other Republicans dismissed her. But J.D. Vance shows up to talk about this in October, of 2016 on Hardball, back when Chris Matthews was still on Hardball. And Chris Matthews says to J.D. Vance, after running a clip of the allegation, he says, "What do you think of this?" Talking to J.D. Vance. He said, "What do you think of this?" This is something, it's sort of interesting, evocative of the time, because we used to say stewardess, first of all. That was a flight attendant. It gives us a sense of history, but this woman was not a show-off. She's just telling what happened so we can know it. That's a direct clip from Chris Matthews. If it sounds a little disjointing, I'm just giving you the word for word what Chris Matthews said, because I don't want anybody saying I misrepresented the case. So basically, this was about a stewardess, this idea that because Jessica Leeds said, he started putting his hand on my skirt, and I wish a stewardess would come and rescue me. So Matthews is talking about the stewardess thing, but ultimately he's saying this woman's telling her story. She's not a show-off. She's just telling what happened. And what does the potential Donald Trump running mate say? He says, yes. And it makes me think that at fundamental, this is sort of he said, she said, right? And at the end of the day, do you believe Donald Trump, who always tells the truth? Just kidding. Or do you believe the woman on the tape? So he starts with the he said, she said thing, which is a little icky because like rape allegations aren't just he said, she said. Women don't lie about being raped. Statistically speaking, they almost never lie about being raped. It's just a fact. Doesn't mean nobody lies. People lie, but most people don't. So it's not just a he said, she said. That's what we mean when we say believe women. We don't mean believe every woman ever in the history of human history. We simply mean we should not begin from a posture of assuming that women are lying about being sexually assaulted, because statistically speaking, they don't. But Vance continues and says, at the end of the day, do you believe Trump, who always tells the truth? Just kidding. Or do you believe the woman on the tape? So J.D. Vance, this guy right here, who's a Republican, who's now on the Trump train. He said Trump was an idiot. He compared him to Hitler. And he basically said he probably did what Jessica Leeds said he did, he's now about to be in the running for president or vice president. And if he's in the running for vice president, he's going to have some splaining to do. Now, I'm not saying this to undermine J.D. Vance's political career, although if he's caught saying too many awful things about Trump, it's going to be damn hard. It's going to be damn hard to pick him because it's going to be hard. He's going to have to explain all this stuff. He's going to have to explain all this stuff. But the other side of it is maybe Trump is saying, look, I want the person who said the worst thing about me so that he can bring those folk over. The people who trust J.D. Vance because he didn't trust Trump. Now he can say, look, you know what? I've seen the light. Trump is the guy. That's all possible. We don't know how this is going to play out, but what we know for sure is that the very people who now are trying to convince you that Donald Trump is a good guy for the country, that he's electable, people who are trying to tell you that you should vote for Donald Trump, those very people months ago, like J.D. Vance, or years ago, like J.D. Vance, were telling you that Trump was a monster. So maybe you shouldn't trust them if the only reason that they're now speaking out for Trump is because they have a political agenda that will be advantaged by Trump winning. Just something for y'all to think about. All right, let's move on to another story, because another guy who just gets in my craw on a daily basis is this guy, your friend, Uncle Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas, oh God, before we even get there, if you're just joining Night School, make sure you hit the like button. Tell your classmates where you're joining in from in the chat. Tell us what city you're coming from, what state you're coming from, what country you're coming from. Let us know. And if you're watching on Twitter, make your way over to YouTube so you can have the full experience. Come to YouTube, watch the full experience, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you want, and just be part of the Night School family. We do this every night. All right. Now I can talk about y'all guy, because it ain't my guy. We could talk about y'all guy, Clarence Thomas. Whew. AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, has made good on her threat to impeach 2 Supreme Court justices. Today, AOC filed articles of impeachment against Justices Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas. Meanwhile, 2 Senate Democrats have sent a letter to U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland, who should be on the damn Supreme Court, that's a whole other story, officially requesting a special counsel to investigate Justice Thomas, as they should. Senators Sheldon Whitehouse and Ron Wyden have asked Garland to appoint a special counsel to look into whether Clarence Thomas violated federal ethics and tax laws by not disclosing a forgiven debt worth more than $267,000 in income, which is just wild. Add that to all the luxury trips, his mama's rent getting paid, and gifts that he got from billionaire Harlan Crow. All of this, much of it, I'll just say much of it. I'm gonna be legally specific. Y'all not gonna sue my ass. Much of it was omitted from Justice Thomas's financial disclosure forms. Look at these forms right here. What you see right here. They wrote, as you can see, we do not take this request lightly. The scale of potential ethics violations by Justice Thomas and the willful pattern of disregard for ethics laws raises significant questions about whether he and his wealthy benefactors have complied with federal tax obligations. The senators still don't know the full scope of Thomas's non-disclosures, but they say evidence thus far suggests that he has accepted gifts and income worth potentially, I'm not trying to make a dramatic drum roll here. I want y'all to hear this. Clarence Thomas has potentially accepted gifts and income worth millions, with an S, millions of dollars. The Senate Finance Committee and the Judiciary Subcommittee on Federal Courts have been investigating Clarence Thomas since last year. And now, Senators Wyden and Whitehouse, they're waiting for Merrick Garland's response. But I know my response already. First of all, when AOC announced that she would be issuing articles of impeachment, some people were like, is this really going to happen? Is this just political posturing? Is there any legitimate outcome that's going to happen other than them staying on the bench? Well, I'm not convinced that this will lead to anything substantive in terms of the court. I'm not sure that Justice Thomas is going to go anywhere. I'm not sure that Alito is going to go anywhere. In fact, I would bet my last dollar they ain't going nowhere because of this. But it's not wasted, because what this does is it draws and Scholar writes in and says, but Mark, the GOP controls the House of Representatives. Isn't this just virtue signaling by AOC? The bill is DOA. Yes and no. And that's where I was going with this. I'm glad you said this. It's not just virtue signaling. It's the right thing to do. Clarence Thomas needs to be impeached. He has a wife. If you look at the behavior of his wife alone, Jenny Thomas, in terms of her relationship to January 6th and to these extremists, who Clarence Thomas then refuses to recuse himself, in cases regarding them, you see judicial impropriety. When you look at all the money he's accepted, all the gifts, I mean, this dude is getting all kinds of stuff. You see a clear conflict of interest. You see a clear inability to be dispassionate, objective, all of these things. This is a problem. And so you don't not impeach someone just because you can't win the fight in the short term, right? You impeach somebody if they've done something impeachable. And if you lose the fight and they don't, same thing with the president, right? You impeach Donald Trump, and even if he doesn't ultimately get removed from office, it doesn't mean you don't impeach if it's the right thing to do, right? You impeach because it's the right thing to do. So no, it's not just a virtue signal, but sometimes virtues need to be signaled. Sometimes you actually need to say, we have a corrupt court. We have a corrupt jurist in Clarence Thomas. And we need to point that out. We need to put a spotlight on it. And it's not just about getting rid of Clarence Thomas. It's putting attention on other people, because maybe if other justices, and not just at the Supreme Court level, at the federal level and at the other circuit levels, or the state level, everywhere, if people know that the world is watching, maybe, just maybe, they won't be as corrupt. Maybe they'll be more reluctant to accept billionaire gifts. This is important if you're going to have any semblance of a democracy. So no, this is not just a virtue signal. It's not just a virtue signal. And I see Victor said we have some Clarence Thomas fans in class tonight. Facts. There's some people out here, y'all clinging on to him the way he cling on to these white folk. And you can rock with Clarence Thomas if you want. You can agree with him judicially. You can agree with his legal philosophy. You can agree with his approach, whether it's his utterances or his silences in terms of his relative reticence to engage in legal opinion writing. You can feel however you feel about Clarence Thomas. I don't care. This isn't about that. I have my own issues with Clarence Thomas, but this isn't about that. This is about judicial impropriety. This is about saying quite clearly, you can't be on the court accepting gifts. You can't be on the court taking money. You can't be on the court with egregious and obvious conflicts of interest. That's what this is about. Anyway, then we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. We got a lot more Night School coming up. Stay right here. All right, family, welcome back to Night School. It's time now for the War on Gaza report. Today, Israel's war on Gaza has reached day 278. It's an unbelievable number, I know, family, but 278 consecutive days now, Israel has launched a relentless and illegal genocidal war on the Palestinian people, and specifically the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. We begin, of course, with the numbers. As of right now, at least 38,295 people, I'm going to say that number again, 38,295 people have been killed, and 88,241 people have been wounded in Israel's war on Gaza. And of course, the death toll in Israel from the Hamas-led attacks on October 7th are estimated to be 1,139. That number stays the same, and dozens of people remain captive in Gaza. Bodies are filling the streets in Gaza City, and at least 30 Palestinians have been killed as Israeli soldiers storm the Tel El Hawa neighborhood of the city. That's according to Mahmoud Bessel, who is the Gaza Civil Defense spokesperson. Gaza City has been targeted for days now, and Israel issued an evacuation order for the entire city. But the evacuation order for the entire city has caused calamities. It's caused bottlenecking. It's caused panic. People don't have anywhere to go. Troops are coming in. People are trying to leave. People are being harmed. People are dying unnecessarily. In fact, according to a spokesperson from the United Nations, it is the evacuation order itself that has caused, quote, mass suffering. That's according to Stéphane Dujarric from the United Nations. And so it is incredibly important to understand that an evacuation order is not evidence that Israel is the world's most moral army that is letting people know before they go in. This has been the most misrepresented claim, the most dishonest claim, to put more succinctly, that we've heard since October 7th. According to Gazan Health Interior Ministry, excuse me, the Gazan Interior Ministry, Israel's evacuation orders for the cities aren't just improper or unhelpful, but they consider them a, quote, form of psychological warfare against civilians. And again, the reason is because people have nowhere to go. What can you imagine setting someone's house on fire and saying everybody out, and then when you let them out, you let them out into more fire? It's terrorism. The Gazan people have nowhere to go. More than 70, I think we might even be at 80% now of the built environment of Gaza is destroyed. All of the schools are destroyed. The universities, most of the schools have been devastated. The hospitals have been leveled. The water wells, the wells have been destroyed. Over 100 of them. There's food insecurity, there's dehydration, there's starvation, and there's massive bombing, there's massive shooting, there's massive military incursions. And in the midst of all of that, you give people humanitarian corridors, which lead to more violence. You give people safe routes, which lead to unsafety. You create all of this disaster, all of this calamity, and then you say, well, but you can leave anytime you want. But the truth is, the only place Palestinians can really leave safely is out of Gaza altogether and out of historic Palestine altogether, which is part of what makes this an ethnic cleansing and what makes this, in legal terminology, because ethnic cleansing isn't a legal term, but genocide is. And that's what this absolutely is. This must stop now. And there are talks happening where maybe this will stop now. Ceasefire talks are continuing right now in Doha, Qatar, as efforts to end the 9-month war are hampered by the attacks. Up until on Saturday, I would have said, there's some, in fact, I did say in my Israel report, my War on Gaza report, that there is optimism by the Israeli government and by the Palestinian and by Hamas that there might be a ceasefire deal. Hamas had dropped some of their non-starters. Israel seems to be willing to negotiate, although it didn't seem like they were actually dropping any of their non-starters. But then in the midst of this ceasefire talk, 4 different schools get attacked on 4 consecutive days, killing dozens of innocent people, innocent young people, innocent teenagers, innocent elderly people. This is Netanyahu's strategy. Say you want peace and do something provocative. Say you want a ceasefire, but continue to fight. Say you want to stop all the violence, but insist on completing all of your military objectives. This is why the war won't end. Please don't let the world tell you that this war is going on because of Hamas. Please don't let the world tell you that this war is continuing because of Arab stubbornness or Palestinian incalcitrance. No. Netanyahu is a wartime prime minister who wants to be in a state of perpetual war forever, because the moment that he's not is the moment that there is no Netanyahu leadership, and he knows that very, very well. All right, well, another person who understands Netanyahu and all that's going on with Israel and Palestine is Facebook and Instagram, or really the parent company known as Meta. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just do some Googling out there. Meta, of course, is the parent company, and Meta has been engaged in some very, let's just say, interesting activities lately. Meta is expanding its hate speech policy to include the word Zionists. That's right. The word Zionist is now going to be considered part of the hate speech policy for Facebook and Instagram based on the actions of the parent company Meta. They are going to start removing content that attacks Zionists and is not explicitly about the political movement. In a blog post, Meta wrote this: "We will now remove speech targeting Zionists in several areas where our process showed the speech tends to be used to refer to Jews and Israelis with dehumanizing comparisons, calls for harm, or denials of existence." Now, what's the reason behind the change? Well, Meta says they made the decision based on feedback from, quote, global stakeholders, user research, and academic reviews. So here's the thing. Are there people in the world who use Zionist as a proxy for Jews as a way of smuggling in anti-Semitism? Absolutely. They're in the extreme minority, though. People who use Zionist and Jew interchangeably and are using it to disparage Jewish people should be taken off of social media platforms. That is hate speech. We should stop all hate speech. But we also have to analyze the kind of political logics and the movements that are built upon, I'm talking about from Zionists and from the pro-Israel lobby, that conflates Judaism and Zionism. The goal of Zionism is to make you think that Judaism and Zionism are the same thing, that Israel is the juridical and geographic embodiment of Judaism, right? So that when you attack Israel, you're attacking Judaism. When you critique Israel, you're critiquing Jews. When you critique Zionism, you're critiquing Jewishness. They want those conflations. So let's not pretend that these conflations are happening out of nowhere. That said, at the end of the day, anti-Semitism has to be repudiated. It cannot be tolerated in any way, form, or fashion. Zionism, however, is a political movement. It is a settler colonial political movement that emerges at the end of the 19th century for the express purpose of colonizing. I'm using their language. I'm using Herzl's language right now. I'm using Jabotinsky's language right now. I'm using the language of the early Yishuv. I'm using the language of the early Zionist movement to come and settle and colonize historic Palestine, what was then Ottoman Palestine and eventually became British Mandate Palestine. This is a fact. So some of the language that they're saying is offensive. Some of the criticisms they're saying that are being levied against Zionism, they're not dehumanizing. They're not evil. Some are. Again, anti-Semitic tropes, anti-Semitic stereotypes, anti-Semitic language should be rejected. But criticizing Zionism as settler colonialism or as racism is not an act of anti-Semitism by any measure except the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, the IHRA definition, which deliberately casts such a broad and expansive net over the notion of anti-Semitism that any criticism of Israel, any negative analysis of Zionism is considered an act of anti-Semitism. That is morally and politically and logically untenable. So Meta, I don't have a problem with Meta saying we're going to crack down on anti-Semitism. I don't have a problem with Meta saying that we're going to use our complex algorithms to make sure that people aren't smuggling in anti-Semitism under the banner of anti-Zionism. I get that. But that also becomes a convenient excuse to ignore the global outcry for justice in Palestine. It becomes an excuse to not allow for a principled and legitimate critique of Zionism, which is happening around the globe. It leads to more silencing of Palestinian voices. It leads to more silencing of pro-Palestinian voices. It leads to more shadow bans. It leads to more erasure. It leads to more hiding. It leads to these kind of cyber political imbalances that are happening on these social media platforms that make it seem as if there's a unanimity, that there's a single kind of dominant voice that's pro-Israel, when in fact the world is far more complex than that. And social media should allow for that complexity, should allow us to have all of the voices, all of the people speaking, all of the work happening, not just the ones we agree with. Isn't that what they say? All right. Hollywood. Hollywood is seen as a place, in general, that's pretty liberal. And it's generally seen as a place that is very, very, very pro-Joe Biden. At least that's what Fox News would have you believe. But it seems as if Hollywood has taken a different tack lately when it comes to Joe Biden and when it comes to what's going on in the Democratic Party. It's kind of like a new trend. It's not a diet, although Hollywood loves some diets. This is a purge. You got A-listers, Hollywood A-listers like this gentleman that you just saw, that handsome chap. I'm going to show him to you again, George Clooney. You see him there? People like George Clooney are calling very publicly and unabashedly for Joe Biden to withdraw from the presidential race. Clooney wrote a New York Times op-ed saying that, look, I'm a lifelong Democrat and I loved Joe Biden and still do love Joe Biden, he says. But if he remains the nominee, the party will lose the White House and the party will lose control in Congress. Now, that's a pretty bold move for Clooney to make, especially at this juncture in the race. Clooney, though, ain't alone. He joins a growing list of high-profile celebrities, people like Rob Reiner, people like Stephen King, people like John Cusack, and, of course, the Disney heir or heiress, Abigail Disney, all who are calling for President Biden to step aside and let another nominee take the top of the Democratic ticket for office. That is no small thing. When you got Hollywood celebrities jumping ship, you got problems, Joe Biden. Because these people hate Donald Trump. These people don't want Donald Trump to be president. This is not people who are pretending to be leftists but really are centrist or on the right. These aren't people who have a personal vendetta against you. They literally are saying, Mr. President, you saved us from Donald Trump 4 years ago, and we need you right now to save us from Donald Trump by moving out the way. It's not a bad argument. Now, I don't agree with Clooney and them about who to replace Joe Biden with. We could all have different philosophies about that. And there's a pragmatic argument for Kamala Harris because, again, as I've said before, you might think that Gavin Newsom is a better choice, but Gavin Newsom will alienate all them black voters who don't want to see Kamala Harris get cast aside. So you might have to go with Kamala Harris because you can't pick Josh Shapiro over Kamala Harris. Can't pick Gavin Newsom over Kamala Harris, even if they might do better in the general election. I don't think Shapiro would, but I think Newsom would. I think Shapiro's too young. I think Shapiro needs a little more time to cook before he's on the national scene. He's much more of a VP choice right now than a top of the ticket choice. All that said, the fact that George Clooney and Rob Reiner and other Hollywood A-listers are saying you have to go, Joe Biden, should tell you something. They're going to hold their nose and vote for you in November. I'm not saying that they're going to vote Trump or stay home, but the fact that the most vocal people on your support list 4 years ago are now not only tepid or silent, but they're vocally saying, leave, that should tell you that this is not a winnable race for Joe Biden. And some of you simple-minded, unnuanced people right now are going to say, all you're doing is beating up Joe Biden and making it easier for Trump to win. And this is the problem with democratic logic. You're basically saying, take what we give you. And if you do anything but take it and smile, it means you must really love the other side. If the stakes are as high as y'all say they are, if the sky is falling, and you know the sky is going to fall if Joe Biden stays in office, then why not give yourself a fighting chance to win? Why not pick somebody else? I'm not saying vote third party. I'm not saying vote Trump. None of that is what we're talking about right now. There's a time and a place for those conversations and debates. I'm saying at this moment, to the Democrats I'm talking to the people who are committed to voting Democrat right now at this moment, if you know Biden can't win, and Biden can't win, just read the polls or look at Biden's face. Watch that debate again. If y'all who are such anti-Trumpers and such pro-Democrats, you just Democrat down to the socks, quote the great Biggie Smalls. If you all of that, then why not give yourself a fighting chance? Why not pick somebody who could actually win? Because that's your argument against me, right? I voted Green Party in 2016, y'all still reminded me of it. Why would you vote for somebody that can't win? I'm telling you, Joe Biden can't win. And some of y'all are like, if you knew Joe Biden couldn't win, you'd still vote for Joe Biden. That's the part that just doesn't make sense to me. That's all. Aaron Bocher gets it. 100% on the stakes, he agrees with me. If democracy is on the line, why aren't we going forward with the strongest possible candidate? That is a reasonable question. That is a very reasonable question. And it's a question that we got to answer. It's a question Joe Biden's got to answer. And as Hollywood gets louder and Hollywood becomes more influential in the political conversation about Joe Biden, the White House can't just keep pretending that everybody's on their side. They're going to have to do something different. They're going to have to do something different. That's all I'm saying. All right, family, we got one more story. One more story before we go. And I want to know what y'all think about this. So as I tell y'all this story, let me know what you think. Let me know if I'm right, wrong, or indifferent. Let me know what you would do differently, how you would manage this. You'll know what I'm talking about when I do
something you've done.
You know, before I'm sorry, I hit the trigger too soon. I hit the trigger too soon. Let me do that one more. Let me run that back one more again. Sorry, I'm working alone tonight. Megan Thee Stallion is everywhere again. I'm so proud of that young lady. She is killing the game. She got a sold-out tour. She's booked and busy. And now she's going on Family Feud. You know you in the big time when you on Family Feud, because Family Feud is some crossover, everybody love you kind of thing. This ain't like a niche thing. It can't just be one sector of the American public, not even one sector of white people. It got to be a whole lot of people to rock with you if you on Family Feud. Anyway, she goes on Family Feud, and an interesting thing happened that got people's feathers ruffled. Steve Harvey presented her with this.
Name something you've done to your mate's feet. Megan.
Massage.
Massage. Pass or play?
Play.
We're going to play. Let's go. Travis, about to dig off into your personal life now.
So it seems like a harmless question. That's a classic Family Feud question, right? Name something you done did to your partner's feet, right? But something's different here. And I think y'all know what the difference is. Megan Thee Stallion was shot in the foot by Tory Lanez. We don't have to say allegedly anymore. We always knew Tory did that shit, but he's been convicted of it. So I can credibly and legally say he shot Megan Thee Stallion in the foot. There was a 2023 interview, and it's one of the things that sticks with me about Megan Thee Stallion, again, who was so courageous and powerful through all of this. There was a 2023 interview where she was on NBC, and they asked her about the shooting, and she said that because of that shooting, she said she would, quote, never be the same. So if Megan Thee Stallion, who, by the way, is famous for her great music, she's famous for her performances, she's famous for her endorsements, but she's also quite famous because of the shooting. TMZ covered it every day, the trial, people all over. Anyway, y'all know that the world knows Megan Thee Stallion is somebody who got shot in the foot. So why would you ask her about feet? That's what a lot of people are saying. Now, my personal opinion is that this was harmless. And hit the like button, y'all, if you agree with me. And put in the comments, do you think this was harmless as I do? I don't think that Steve Harvey meant any harm. I don't think Steve Harvey was trying to be funny. I don't think Steve Harvey was trying to play her. I don't think Steve Harvey was trying to embarrass her. I don't think anybody was trying to smuggle in a subliminal dig. I don't think it was any of that. I think it was just a question that they hadn't thought of. But some people are like, this is disrespectful. They're outraged. There is a portion of social media that always wants to be outraged. I'm literally shaking. You can say something, you can say the most harmless thing or something that is maybe problematic, but clearly unintended. And people have to act like it is the worst thing that's ever been done and that they can't imagine having done it before. I'm not one of those people. I don't think that this was poorly intentioned, but I do believe that it was poorly executed. I don't think they considered that Meghan got shot in the foot when they asked that question. I bet you they just have a bank of questions and that was the next one up. Or is it possible that there were some producers just a complete jerk? They wanted to smuggle that question in? Maybe, but I don't think so. That's not what Steve Harvey's about. That's not what that show is about. This show is not political. The show is not controversial. It's just not what Family Feud is about. But the lesson here is, as a TV host, as a TV producer, as a TV executive, I'm talking about all the people involved in the show, you have to look out for things like that. When you do the rehearsal, when you read that question, you got to say, wait a minute, Meg got shot in the foot. Let's not bring this up because it might make her uncomfortable, or she might think we're being funny, or it may offend the audience. And maybe they ran it by Meghan and she was okay with it. Even if she was okay with it, if the audience is having this kind of reaction to your show, maybe you shouldn't do it because it didn't bring you no fans and it could have lost you some. So I am not of the belief, again, I'm not of the belief that this was done intentionally. I don't believe that, you know, and again, you can hear it in Steve's voice. Listen.
Name something you've done to your mate's feet. Meghan.
Massage.
Massage.
And Meghan doesn't seem disturbed by it. She doesn't seem outraged by it. She doesn't seem offended by it. She didn't even miss a beat. So I don't think she thought about it either. I think this is a lot of the audience being more outraged than Meg or Steve or the producers. But again, if the audience feels this way or this is triggering to people, it's something to think about. And I get this generation is triggered by everything. So I don't think we can manage that. But what we can do is be thoughtful about people's traumas. If somebody got shot in the foot, don't ask them no feet questions. That's an easy one, y'all. That seems like an easy one. Anyway, that's it for Night School tonight. Thank you for watching. I appreciate y'all as always. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your thoughts. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your donations. I appreciate every single bit of it. And actually, before we go, Alejandro Espejo says, thoughts on Bernie as VP? No. Bernie's time has passed. If we're talking about Biden being too damn old, I don't think you pull Bernie Sanders in as a VP. It just doesn't make sense to me. With our eyes, Rise said, with the 2-seat narrow margin in the Senate, we must pressure the 3 Black Democratic senators to force a Senate vote on reparations. See the petition at Fight the Power, THA. I agree. We absolutely need to push a vote on reparations. I don't know how effective it'll be in the Senate right now, but we need to keep the conversation on reparations going. Descendants of slavery in the United States need reparations, deserve reparations, and that has to be an ongoing fight. And nobody who gets our vote should be talking about anything but reparations. And I'm not talking about symbolic reparations. I'm talking about cash payments. All right, y'all, that's it for tonight. Thank you for watching. Once again, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And of course, if you're so inclined, hit the join button and become a monthly subscriber or a monthly member of the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel. I appreciate y'all for watching every single night. I appreciate the work that y'all do to help me do the work that I do. And part of that work is producing a grassroots radical media alternative. And that comes not with a billionaire check. I ain't got none. Not with corporate support. I don't have a single dollar of corporate support. This is all from my pocket and your support. So please, I ask if you can, go to the desktop on YouTube and hit the join button and become a monthly subscriber for as low as $3.99 a month. And if you can't make a monthly commitment, make a one-time tuition payment for the month. Go to Cash App, go to PayPal, go to Venmo, go to Zelle, and send whatever you can afford. But I tell you, if everybody watching right now were to simply send $10, if everybody watching right now were to send $10 for the month, we will meet all of our financial goals for the month, including funding the podcast, funding the nightly show, paying our staff, and building that studio with high quality video editing and podcasting equipment. We want to do it. We want to build this in the way that allow us for steady growth and to really, really, really strike a blow against mainstream corporate media. Not just the structure, but the ideas. We want to liberate our people, and we can only do that with grassroots support. So again, if you could drop $10 in our donation bin for tuition for the month, we would greatly appreciate it. But if money isn't something that you can do right now, I understand. I only ask that you keep watching, keep sharing the content, and keep studying, because that is what Night School is all about. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later. Peace.